Hello, listeners. Mallory Wilsey here, Chief Producer of the Enrollify Network, and I want to take just a quick moment to tell you about another show on our podcast network that I think you'll love. Confessions of a Higher Ed Social Media Manager is your ultimate guide to understanding the do's, don'ts, and complexities of the higher ed social media ecosystem. Host Jenny Lee Fowler from MIT brings her expertise and passion for social media to the table. Each episode offers a deep dive into real world examples, dissecting what worked, what didn't, and identifying valuable lessons along the way. You'll get the key insights and tips to help you elevate your own social media game. Make sure your social media efforts hit the mark every time. Subscribe to Confessions of a Higher Ed Social Media Manager by visiting podcast.enrollify.org or search for it wherever you love to listen to podcasts.
Hi, I'm a higher ed CMO and I have a confession to make. I just quit my job. You're going to have to listen to the rest of this episode to find out more. Welcome to Confessions of a Higher Ed CMO, a podcast that empowers higher ed marketers to bring innovation, creativity, and excellence to their work. I'm your host, Jaime Hunt. Join me every 2 weeks for discussions with some of the best minds in higher education marketing. Confessions of a Higher Ed CMO is part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher educational professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. So, listeners, I dropped quite a bomb on you in my confession. And you're probably wondering, what the heck is Jaime Hunt doing? And I'm going to tell you, but I'm going to tell you in a little bit of a different way. This episode of the podcast is going to be structured a little differently. Instead of me being the interviewer, I'm going to be the interviewee. And I'm going to be interviewed by none other than Dave Hunt, who happens to be my husband and who has a lot of podcasting experience. And you might remember him from his episode on this show. Dave, welcome me to the show.
Well, thank you, Jamie, and welcome to your own show.
It's great to
uh,
be here.
yes. Yeah, Jamie gets to be in the hot seat this week. So, Jamie, you've teased it. You have a really big announcement. So, tell us your big news.
As I said in my confession, I have quit my job at Old Dominion University and I am launching a full time consulting agency called Solve Higher Ed. And I'm absolutely amazed that I am at this point where I am taking this big, giant leap into the unknown and excited and terrified and exhilarated and terrified and excited and all the things about this. But this is something that I have been wanting to do for a long time. And I am absolutely thrilled that today is the day.
So, you've been in higher education for 20 years.
Yes.
What's prompted you to transition into consulting? And were there specific moments or experiences that influenced your decision to go this route, change careers?
I've been in higher ed for 20 years. And before that, I had a small stint at a really small, I think there were 4 employees, boutique agency. I was in my early 20s. That role was sandwiched between 2 reporting jobs. So I was a reporter, then I worked at this little agency, and then I was a reporter again before working in higher ed. And when I was working at that agency, the owner of it retired. And 2 of the 4 of us ended up buying the agency and making it their own. And at the time, I think I was 24. I was not positioned. As you might remember, Dave, we were still living in an apartment and we had one
Yes.
car.
Yes.
Buying an agency was not really a financially viable solution for us. But at that time, I was like, this is something I want to do down the road. And having something that is my own, where I can have the opportunity to kind of build something that I'm building with my vision is super, super exciting for me. But in terms of like, why now? I feel like higher ed is at a really critical point. Like we have lost so much public trust. We're in a situation post pandemic where there are so many people now opting out of higher education, and particularly male students. But we're losing a lot of our traditional base of students. And I'm deeply concerned about the future of higher ed. Have threats from all sides, and it is something that I think is an existential crisis right now. And so, as I was thinking about this over the holidays and leading into the spring semester, I was thinking about how I feel like I have the opportunity to make an impact on a larger scale if I can work with institutions across the country instead of just the institution that employs me. That I think I can have a bigger impact helping more schools. And when I think about higher ed marketing, I really think that it has the opportunity to save higher ed. In fact, that's my slogan. As I said, my company's name is Solve. And so my slogan is Solve Higher Ed Marketing, Save Higher Ed. And I really think that that's true. Right now, we need to elevate our marketing, to mature our operations, our organizations, and we really need to be able to more effectively communicate the value of higher education and what we offer. And if I can play a role in helping more universities do just that, I think that means that I can have a role in saving higher education. And I'm deeply concerned because I'm really worried that in 20 years, we're going to lose a lot of our institutions. And that's a tragedy. I mean, I so believe in the power of higher education that the thought of even one school closing or even the thought of even one student who should and wants to and has a dream to attend higher ed not going, that just breaks my heart. And I want to have the kind of impact that can hopefully shift that trajectory. In terms of why now, why today, why 2024, that's it. And I think also, as I'm approaching my 20th spring commencement, you know, I'm ready for a different challenge, for something a little different. And as I mentioned in my episode about disabilities, and as I'm a person who has one that's actually really well in control right now. But being able to work remotely, fully from home, being able to, have my office commute be a 30-foot walk from my bedroom to the office, that's also super appealing right now as well.
Well, that's very exciting. So, what kind of services will you be offering?
I'm kind of breaking down what my services are into four main areas. The first is consulting. So that's doing things that are those very strategic, operational, organizational level things, from fractional CMO to serving as an interim CMO for an institution that's in a period of transition, to things like student journey mapping, organizational assessments, project management assessment and implementation, budget evaluation and recommendation, AI training, and all of that kind of stuff. And then I am also going to be offering communications consultation. So that would be things like crisis communications, issues and reputation management stuff, content strategy, change management, services around internal communications, that sort of thing. And then marketing services. So building custom marketing maturity models for organizations, helping with marketing strategic planning, audits, training, workshops, that kind of thing. And then brand. So a lot of organizations can't afford to pay some of the big branding agencies that are very, very talented and definitely worth the investment if you have the dollars. But not everybody can afford to hire an agency that has overhead and large staffs and offices and the kinds of things that make the pricing justifiably get a little higher. So I'm able to help with branding, particularly brand positioning and strategy, building message platforms, helping you figure out how to integrate that messaging across your organization, across your communications channels, doing things like competitor analyses, planning brand rollouts, and again, training and workshops. And then the final kind of pillar of what I'm going to be doing is offering workshops, keynotes, and tailored presentations for organizations with the goal of kind of creating some really powerful and entertaining content that helps my colleagues across higher ed achieve their goals.
My next question, I feel like is a very broad one in a way, but I feel like the answer the answer could be very extensive. How do you feel like the roles that you have in higher education have prepared you for this career?
I mean, honestly, I feel like I've spent the last 20 years consulting in a lot of ways. It's just
Yeah.
only been consulting with one organization, because as marketers, we go into meetings with departments, units, leadership, and provide our counsel. I mean, that's as a somebody who's been at the chief marketing officer level for 9 years, which is absolutely mind-blowing to me, like 9 years I've been a CMO. And I know there's a lot of people that have been that longer, but it's just gone by so fast. I've seen it all. I mean, there's, like, very little I haven't experienced, during my career, and I've worked at institutions of varying sizes from 1,000 students to 25,000 students, from R1 research university to a very niche private to a historically Black university, to a very selective university. And I feel like all of those experiences have sort of rolled up into something that makes consulting both attractive and really, really feasible for me.
What have been the most significant challenges you've faced during this transition?
Yeah.
And I know it's
So
kind of an ongoing transition,
yeah.
but
So far, I mean, a big piece of it is like, what the heck am I doing from like a business perspective?
mm,
Getting your employee identification number, setting up your LLC, getting your accounting figured out. All the things that like I would be delegating to a fiscal tech that I have to do now, ordering checks and getting my Zoom account set up and all of those sorts of things, and figuring out how to do project proposals and how to price the services and the projects that I'm offering. That has been big challenges. Also, I gave ODU 19 weeks of notice. And I'm not going to lie, like that's been a little challenging. I'm very excited to get started with my business. And, I'm really, really glad that I've been able to spend the time kind of wrapping up some things at ODU. The last couple weeks of those 19 weeks have been like, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to get going. I'm ready to get started. I'm ready to do things. You know what I mean?
I'm kind of reminded of that the ending of When Harry Met Sally, where it's like when you know how you want to spend the rest of your life, you want the rest of your life to start as soon as possible,
Yes.
like in a way. But it's also been, I'm sure, beneficial for everyone at ODU for you to close things out well and thoughtfully and have that time too. But also, like, could the future happen now, please?
Yes. It's funny because I had, 2 staff people, one of them said, Jamie, you're gonna have the rest of your life to run your business. You should savor these last few months working with us." And the other one said, "I don't know how you're doing it. If I were you, I would just stop. I would just go home and call it quits now. You must be so excited." So and that was actually they said that unprompted within a half an hour of each other.
That's
So
funny.
it's just
Yeah.
really funny.
Yeah. The different responses. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So, what do you anticipate will be the most rewarding aspects of moving into consulting?
I think it's gonna be really rewarding to see a lot of schools be more successful with their marketing. I'm always rewarded when my institution sees results, right? And so I think seeing other institutions get results is going to be really, really exciting. And to be able to see other CMOs look great because of projects that I'm able to help with, that's going to be really rewarding. I think I'm going to miss Honestly, Dave, a lot leading a team. I
Mhm.
think that's going to be a big change for me because I think mentoring and leading a staff and helping them become their best selves is one of the best parts of the job. It's the part I love the best. But I'm hoping that I can channel a lot of that into more formally mentoring people outside my organization, more formally coaching people. So hopefully, a lot of rewarding things come. I'm not naive enough to think that all of it's going to be rewarding. I know taxes are not going to be rewarding at all, but I'm looking forward to a lot of different pieces.
Yeah. We could probably have a whole separate podcast episode on change.
Yeah.
I think you've probably had an episode or maybe two on change management, or certainly episodes that have touched on it. But now, with you on the hot seat, we get to talk about change. How are you managing the uncertainties and risks associated with career changes now that you're this side of things?
Oh, Dave, you act like you don't know that I cry every day.
Well, we don't have the recording going 24/7,
Right?
thankfully.
Dave needs like a body cam so you
Right.
all can see the absolute highs and lows. I mean, honestly, a couple of days ago, I was like, I'm never going to be successful. This is going to be awful, sobbing. And then, the next day I get one of my proposals was accepted and is moving through the procurement process. And I'm like, I'm going to kill it. It's going to be amazing. Um, but so this is just a rocky lots of highs and lows through this process. In terms of managing the uncertainties, I'm really trying to stay rooted in who I am and in believing that I am good at what I do, which is everybody I think knows that and so many people suffer from imposter syndrome. I mean, that is just like inherent in, I think, being a woman, being, a person with a disability, being a queer woman, being a person who was the first in my family to graduate from college, being somebody who's not from the same socioeconomic position that I'm in right now. I think all of that leads you to think that you don't belong in a lot of the spaces that you're in. And I've worked really, really hard to develop a confidence of who I am and what I offer. That has been really helpful, just grounding myself in that. Having some really great cheerleaders. I'm hesitant to even name them because I know I'm going to leave people off. But the way that my network has stepped up for me in the past a couple of months has absolutely I'm mind blown over it. I can't even tell you how grateful I am for the support of some really important people in my life and people that I didn't know well before I started doing this that are now like my ride or dies. This is such a supportive community, and I've said that so many times on this podcast, but they have just absolutely blown my expectations in terms of the support of my community and my network. I'm so grateful. I'm so honored. I feel so privileged. I know that I have really prided myself on building authentic relationships that aren't transactional, and I think that's something that people sense and feel about me, and I think that I hate to say that pays off because it's not like why I set out to have these relationships, but um, I just can't imagine a better group of friends, colleagues, networks, even people who listen to this podcast. Every time somebody sends me a note saying that they got something out of it or that they really appreciate what I do, all of that has helped me have the confidence that I need to take me through this really honestly terrifying journey of saying goodbye to a really good job and a really good job that pays really well and jumping completely into the unknown. I don't think I'd be able to do it without my network. I really don't.
It's been fun for me to see all these people just like, I mean, I don't want to say step up like in but like just really like kind of surround you and support you. And um I try to be that for you also, of course, as well. But it's amazing that there's this whole network that you've built. And like you've given so much to people, and you care so much about the profession, that it's cool to see people in and around higher ed being so supportive. And I think it is one of those things that makes higher ed unique. Like, we're all, at the end of the day, there's 4,000 institutions all fighting over trying to get students enrolled, but at the same time, the people who work in this profession are really giving and supportive of each other, and understand the stresses that everybody is facing, and want everybody to be as successful as they can be. And it's been really cool to see that as more of a bystander.
Yeah.
And since I'm your husband, I appreciate it too, because it's not just me giving you all the emotional support and the cheerleading. So
Yeah.
I appreciate them too.
My team was talking about the zoomies, like cats
Mm.
and dogs get the zoomies, right? Where they'll just like zoom around a room with their ears pinned back and it's like pure unmitigated joy. And we were trying to think about what's the human equivalent of that. And I was thinking it's, there's been so many moments since I started sharing with people what I'm doing that where they have stepped up and helped in some way, whether through encouragement or referring me to somebody or whatever, fill in the blank, helping me with some challenge. There have been so many moments where I've gotten like the internal zoomies, and there's been times where I've actually like jumped up from my desk and done like a little dance and run around the room, just like unable to contain physically the joy that I'm experiencing. So it's like I'm getting little zoomies all over the place over the past several months. And to me, that says I'm doing what I should be doing.
Yeah.
Like the zoomies are, how do you beat the zoomies,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
I'm so jealous when I see a dog with the zoomies.
I mean, you could get out there and run.
Yeah. That's a lot of exercise, Dave.
Right? I know. We're not runners.
No, not unless something's chasing us.
Right, right. It needs to be something scary. So, what are your long-term goals in consulting, and how do you think that you'll achieve them?
Yeah. So when I started with this dream and I started talking about this, like I'm not gonna lie, it's been almost a year.
Yeah.
When I started talking about this, my initial goal was like I just want to basically do consulting and do it as like a one man show and just, do projects kind of one at a time. And it's evolved a little bit. I don't know that I would ever build a full agency like a Simpson Scarborough or an Ology or, 160 over 90 or fill in the blank. But I'm not ruling out that there might be a time when I have team members that are helping me. If I get to the point where I feel like I can have a bigger impact if I grow, I'm not opposed to that. But I'm also okay with not being worried about somebody else's income behind besides mine.
Mm,
I think there's a lot of that's a little scary to me. I
yeah, it's
admire
stressful.
Seth Odell so much, right? You and
Yeah.
I talk about
Yes, he's amazing.
right? Who's better in the world than Seth Odell, right? At what he does. But so Seth started Canahoma and when he and I have talked, he was an early person that I talked to, like
Hmm.
gosh, like back in last October. A great supporter. But when he started Canahoma, he didn't intend necessarily for it to become the massive, I think he's got like 30 plus employees agency that it has become. And there's a lot of like, type A firstborn
Hmm.
oldest daughter in me that's like, how big can I get this?
Yeah.
But then there's also this like, okay, but you have to make sure that people's livelihoods are taken care of. And that's a level of stress that I'm not sure I'm ready for right now.
Yeah.
Um, but we'll see. I think I've talked to people about how like that question of where do you see yourself in 5 years is like a life is what happens when you're making other plans, right?
Right. Right.
So we'll see. We'll see where this takes me. I'm
Yeah.
I'm not ruling anything out. I don't necessarily envision going back to a campus. That said, there are certain college presidents, and I know that at least one of them, Janet Spriggs, knows who they are, that I would, love to work for at some point. But, I also think there's a possibility that I could get on a campus and be like, I just love it. And this is where I want to be. So I think one of the things that makes all of this possible is being open to what's possible
Hmm.
and what comes. And that's where I'm at.
Yeah. I think, you and I have lived in lots of places and worked at several different institutions, and none of them were places that we would have known we were going to end up at,
Mm-mm.
yeah, even a year in advance before we got there, I feel like.
No.
But being open to the opportunities and, being willing to take advantage of them and to pivot if a pivot is required to be able to do them has been something that I feel like has made for an exciting and interesting life. And you kind of become a bit of a change junkie in a way, like where it's like, okay, well, I got this under control. How can we how can we find the next adventure, or figure out where the next cool thing that we can do is within this. So
Yeah.
um
I mean, right now, I don't wanna move. Like,
yeah, no, I'm
right
not eager
now,
to
I don't wanna
no,
move.
no, same.
We live just a couple blocks from the beach. Today, Dave and I actually bought a golf cart to make it easier to get all of our beach, accoutrement to the beach, on a beautiful day, and, I'm not interested in moving in this moment, but,
Right.
the right thing comes along. I'm not necessarily I never rule things out.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's kind of what we've learned through our careers, is like, hear things out, consider things before just automatically saying no, like
Yeah.
treat things as a, well, what if? And that can very often, I mean, oftentimes it has led us to no, but there are times then that you're able to say yes. So, um, I wanted to ask you about this. I feel like this, again, this could be a whole episode unto itself, but you talked about this a little bit at the beginning with some of the changes that you're seeing in higher ed. How could you talk a little bit more about the landscape of higher ed, how it's changing, and maybe not just the downside to it, but also what the opportunities are that these changes are creating?
Yeah. So that's one thing I forgot to mention that I'm looking forward to, and that is I know some of you have seen some of my spicy takes on LinkedIn, and I'm looking forward to being unfettered by being a public employee and being able to have as many spicy takes as my boss, which is me, feels comfortable with me having. I think that the higher ed landscape is holy cow, are we
Yeah.
in a moment? The DEI issues that are happening right now around institutions having to, dissolve their DEI offices and eliminate their programmings. I see that as something that is hugely problematic, but also points to a larger game plan around harming higher education
Hmm.
and changing the very fabric of higher education. And I'm hopeful that as a independent contractor, I can help bring some people together to do some real work, some real campaigns, some real playbook development to try to help counter some of the really harmful, toxic, and inaccurate narratives that exist about higher ed right now. And so that's something that I'm hoping that I can be a part of changing. I also see how that AI is going to have a tremendous impact on what we do, whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
I mean, it is happening.
Yeah. It's
And I'm
here.
yeah, right. And I'm not just talking about how we use generative AI in marketing.
Right.
I'm talking about how AI gets integrated into everything that we do, teaching, learning, living, working, all of it. And so I think there's opportunities there for people in the consulting space to help others get to where they need to be in those spaces. And for me, with my expertise being in marketing communications, it would be the marketing and communications aspects of that. But I think there's a ton of opportunity there to make a difference as well. I would like us to take a really good hard look at the model of higher ed, the way it's delivered, um, primarily in person or fully online. I think that does a disservice to our students who are going to be going into hybrid workplaces, and they're not prepared for what hybrid looks like, for how to work within a hybrid landscape. I know I posted about that on LinkedIn, and a few people were like, "Well, engagement is better in person." And I'm not disagreeing. What I'm saying is, can we be the leaders in figuring out how to make engagement just as effective when the students are at home versus sitting physically in the classroom? How can we help prepare our students for that? So that's something I hope to see, and I'm hoping that now that I am unfettered by worrying what the governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia thinks about what I say, I'm hoping that I will have more opportunities to speak on a lot of topics that I've previously held back on, both in as a keynote speaker or workshop leader, as well as write more op-eds and perhaps even do some research pieces that dig into these topics. So that's really exciting. It's exciting to stay in the higher education space, and be able to hopefully say the things that need to be said because I'm not worried about a governor telling me I
Right.
can't have a job.
Right. Your job's not on the line when you every
Right.
time you open your mouth.
Exactly.
Yeah. How do you hope your work in consulting will impact higher education? I mean, you've talked about it a little bit, but it's such a big potential topic. And as you think about all the different services that you're going to be potentially offering, like what else comes to mind?
Yeah. I mean, I think about how you and I don't have any children, and you know, all that I will have as a legacy is how I made people feel and how I shaped things to make them better for the next generation. And that's really a big driver for me. I want the institutions that I work with to be more successful and to thrive, because that means that thousands, hundreds of thousands of young people, returning adult learners, and their families are going to be impacted and be able to have the kind of opportunities that I've had to have a better life than I think I even dreamed. And so that sounds super lofty. Like, how is creating a crisis communication framework for an institution going to do that? And I think of it in the long game. If you manage a crisis well, that helps your reputation, which means that perhaps you don't drop an enrollment after a crisis, or perhaps even you grow an enrollment because you handled the crisis so well, which means that there's that many more students getting an education. You might ask, how in the world is a student journey map going to, you know, change thousands of lives? But if you create a tool or a tactic or a strategy that can re- reduce, melt, improve yield, improve first semester to second semester persistence, improve retention rates. Every single student that we have at our institutions, every single one of them is an individual with a whole scope of life, right? They have a whole lifetime to benefit from their education, and they're a whole human being. So even if the approach moves the needle by having just one more student actually be like, "You know what? These messages convince me I actually can do it. I can be successful." That's one person whose whole life is different now. And so when I think about that impact, if I can impact one person, it's a win. But I'm hopeful, and I believe very sincerely that I'm talking about thousands, tens of thousands of people that will be impacted by the work that I do. And that's humbling and exciting, and that should make us all, because it's not just me, right? It will be everybody who works on the project, and it's all of us in higher ed. All of us in higher ed are having a role in changing people's lives, and that's exciting.
And I also wanted to say, I think the other piece of that, that you maybe want you maybe want say this about yourself, but I have seen the impact that you have had on the staffs that you've worked with, the teams that you've built, and you're also impacting all the people within higher ed who are in those situations, handling those crises or trying to do those things where you're improving processes and keeping students engaged and staying at the institution. Like the impact that you're having on keeping good people
Yeah.
in higher ed roles, whether you're embedded at an institution like you have been, or you're in a higher ed adjacent role like you're moving into, having good people in our industry, for lack of a better word, is so critical to our overall success. And you're not just impacting the students, you're also having the opportunity to impact all the people who are working in higher ed, wherever you touch them. So I think that's another piece of this that I think is super exciting to see.
Yeah. I That's a really good point. And I think about, the very first major crisis that I dealt with, I was terrified. I felt so uncertain of what I did. I made mistakes. We're all going to make mistakes, but I made mistakes that were made out of nervousness and uncertainty. And I was anxious about asking for help because I thought that showed I didn't know what I was doing. And
Hmm.
as I built up expertise in crisis communications, it's it's like I'm the calmest person in the room. I'm the one that brings down the temperature. I'm the one that keeps everybody sort of like, okay, it's going to be okay. I've had presidents ask me, "Are you even awake? Like, are you like, do you have a pulse? Aren't you scared?" You know, and I think about like, helping somebody build a crisis communication framework and train their team so that they can be the calmest person in the room,
Hmm.
so that better decisions can be made during a crisis. That's just one example of, how you can help somebody else in the field. And then, like, if I didn't get any better at managing crises, I don't know if I'd still be in higher ed. I certainly wouldn't be in higher ed leadership.
Yeah.
And so, you're right. If a mentorship or a coaching or a training can help somebody feel more confidence that they're not like, I can't do this. I can't do this. That's a win too. You've
Yeah.
you've pointed out something I hadn't thought about before. That's a
Yes.
first. I'm just kidding.
Yes. Well, I'm glad that I could be of service. um, well, and on that note, I mean that's actually probably a good place to kind of think about wrapping this conversation up. Is there anything else that you want to add that we haven't talked about yet?
Dave, I think I would close out by saying, you know, do what makes you happy, right? And what makes me happy is helping other people accomplish their goals, right? And so that was what makes this be a good fit for me. But for somebody else, it will be a different journey. For somebody else, it'll be another path. For a lot of people, it's going to be working at an institution and helping that institution get better and do better and thrive, and that's absolutely amazing. For me, it's this, and for me, it's this for now. But just I would just say, do the things that make you happy, and do the things that help you to be your best self and that allow you to help others be their best selves. So I'm really excited. And I'm really hoping, because this is, Confessions of a Higher Ed CMO, so I have to, end it here. But I'm really hoping that we're able to, go bust some silos, Um, but in the meantime, if you want to connect with me, as always, you can find me on LinkedIn, Jaime Hunt. I am still on X, but very, very, very rarely, Jaime Hunt IMC. And you can learn all about this new venture at solvehighered.com or email me at hello@solvehighered.com, because I did not want to challenge you with trying to remember that my parents named me weird. So you can reach me there. And, I just look forward to kind of sharing this journey with you on LinkedIn, and sharing what I'm up to. And I'm so appreciative of the listeners, and I'm not going anywhere. I'm still going to have this podcast. So, stay tuned for more great, great episodes with great guests. But, you know, I appreciate you taking the time to listen and hear about this next step in my journey. And thank you, Dave, for coming on here and letting me be the interviewee.
I'm happy to do it.
And until next time, everybody, let's go bust some silos. Confessions of a Higher Ed CMO is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed marketers and admissions professionals find their next big idea and feature a selection of the industry best as your host. Learn from Mallory Wilsey, Seth Odell, Jenny Lee Fowler, Eddie Francis, and so many other of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.